church. You advise.
Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today asking for your help as a community to always make the best decisions possible. Lord, I thank you for our county commissioners and for their willingness to serve our county and our people. I pray that your Spirit would be in this place today. I pray, Lord, that they would make decisions that would honor you and would benefit this community. Lord, I ask also that in all things that we would seek peace and unity among our citizens. And I ask, God, that in all things you would be glorified. Be in this meeting today. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor.
Give me your phone.
Introduction of elected officials. I see Ms. Catherine Hill in the audience. Was in the audience. Where are you, Catherine? There she is. Thank you for being here. I see retired property appraiser Newt King. Thank you for being here, Newt. Oh, okay, David. David's back there. Okay, thank you. I didn't see you earlier. David Williams, our property appraiser. Anyone else? Am I missing? All right. Set or amend the agenda.
So move, Mr. Chairman. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mansfield, a second by Commissioner Langford. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Public forum for non-agenda items. I have a good number of requests to speak on agenda item 14. I have only one on non-agenda items, and I'll call Ms. Susan Barnes.
Copies, but I talked to Gary Hill personally. I left a message with Jimmy Shaver, and you were on my list to call. Okay? This is a serious.
You have to speak, name and address for the record.
My name is Susan Barnes. I reside at 1365 Southeast Airport Road in the county, on the right side of the road going south. The fifth house on the right. My house, the house to my immediate south at 1381 Southeast Airport Road was abandoned more than a year ago by its owners, Robert and Betty Hodgson. But since then, it has been the home of squatters, apparent drug dealers, and a stream of homeless persons and their dogs. I have contacted code enforcement numerous times this year and last year. Actually, I think the first time was before Hurricane Irma, when there was so much junk in the yard. This is an addition to that. And Tommy Turnbull and his staff have been very helpful in going out, noting the violations, and citing the property owners, Danny Webb, who's the one that stayed in the property when they left, and others at this address. In recent months, the junk and clutter has started to look like a homeless camp, with bicycles, tarps, electrical extension cords and I think water lines running from the rental house directly to the south of 1381 Southeast Airport Road. And it's been going on for a long time. I have also contacted members of the DeSoto County Sheriff's Department with my concerns about drug selling and distribution. At all hours of the night and day, and my bedroom is right there beside the house, I have noticed young men and women on bicycles wearing backpacks and coming in and out of 1381 Southeast Airport Road. I have asked the DeSoto County Sheriff's Department to watch the property, and I have verbally given them permission to do surveillance from my property of that house. There's a steady stream of cars and trucks dropping off and picking up whatever it is. I am concerned about my safety and that of my family and friends. I have a 5-year-old grandson who sees what is going on. Please do all in your power to close down this drug den, is what I call it. My mother, Anita Barnes, who died in January at age 96, this was one of her worries, what was going on at this house. And my son, Anthony Barnes, recently died at age 20, actually last week. And this was a deep concern to him. I am making members of the board aware of this for the record. Respectfully submitted, Susan Barnes, 863-244-9618. And by the way, in May, I kept a 24-hour record of everything that was going on and who came and went. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner. Do we know who owns this piece of property now?
We do. Code enforcement has a very active file on it, as well as the sheriff's office is aware of the complaints on that property. And George and Tommy are here today to have enforcement on the file. And I know that just this week, Ms. Barnes allowed our staff to go onto the property where they could take pictures at the back of the house, which we can't legally access without that permission. And so I think we're doing everything we can from a code enforcement. On the drug side, that's a law enforcement issue.
Okay. And the sheriff is well aware of this.
Major, yes, sir.
Okay. Consent agenda, motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Langford, a second by Commissioner Mansfield. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 7. Ms. Hines, you want to call on?
Yes, sir. I'd like to invite our Veteran Service Officer up to the podium, Mr. Steve Rickard, who started this initiative, and he has a proclamation that we'd like the board to consider, and Steve will read it into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But before I read this proclamation, I would like to invite Mr. John Brunton Jr., who is the Military Order of the Purple Heart Department Commander here in Florida, to come up here to the podium with me. Thank you, sir. Whereas the County of DeSoto in the state of Florida has always supported its military veterans population, and whereas the Purple Heart is the oldest military decoration in present use and was initially created as the badge of military merit by General George Washington in 1782. And whereas the Purple Heart was the first American Service Award or decoration made available to the common soldier and is specifically awarded to the members of the United States Armed Forces who have been wounded or paid the ultimate sacrifice in combat with a declared enemy of the United States of America. And whereas the mission of the Military Order of the Purple Heart is to foster an environment of goodwill among the combat wounded, veteran members and their families, promote patriotism, support legislative initiatives, and most importantly, make sure we never forget. And whereas the DeSoto County has a large, highly decorated veteran population, including many Purple Heart recipients, and whereas DeSoto County appreciates the sacrifice our Purple Heart recipients made in defending our freedom, and believe it is important that we acknowledge them for their courage and show them that the honor and support they have earned. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the DeSoto County Board of Commissioners that DeSoto County is a Purple Heart County, and encourages the citizens of DeSoto County to show their appreciation for the sacrifices the Purple Heart recipients have made in defending our freedom, to acknowledge their courage and to show them the honor and support they have earned.
Madam Vice Chairman?
Yes, would you like to speak or say anything?
Just like to thank the county commission for having me here today, and to tell you, you are the 29th county out of the 67 counties we have that are now a Purple Heart County.
Thank you very much. This means a lot because for those that serves, and that's something that's very dear to my heart. So, does anybody have anything they want to add to this? If not,
Madam Vice Chairman?
yes, sir.
I'd like to move to proclaim DeSoto County, Florida as a Purple Heart County.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion made by Commissioner Self and a second by Commissioner Langford. Do I hear anybody that would like to say anything before we vote? Okay, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And of course, we have none. So you'll make the presentation of the,
Buddy, would you come down with me?
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to present this to Steve and Mr. Brunton. Is that?
Yes.
And, you know, men and women shed a lot of blood in this country and been injured. And it's with great honor that I feel that I'm being able to be on this board, that we promote and recognize those who have served and have either been wounded or wounded with the ultimate sacrifice. Again, thank y'all for being here. Thank you.
You can't leave yet. Okay. I tried to get away too.
nice try.
There you go, there you go.
Agenda item number 8. Mr. Brian Wagner.
afternoon, Board of County Commissioners, Brian Wagner, Budget Coordinator. Today I have some budget amendments for your review and approval. Budget Amendment 2018-203 is the landfill construction. This is the budget interest income in the current fiscal year 17-18 budget. Budget Amendment 2018-206 Law Enforcement Trust Fund. The Law Enforcement Trust Fund revenues received from fines and forfeitures. The Sheriff's Department has requested to be placed in the Law Enforcement Trust Reserves. Budget Amendment 2018-208 Special Projects Fund. This is the NRCS drainage erosion permitting costs. Budget Amendment 2018-211 Law Enforcement Trust. The Sheriff requests transfers from the Law Enforcement Trust to the Sheriff operating account for the Narcotics Division. And lastly, Budget Amendment 2018-213 Hurricane Irma Fund. This is to budget the Seacoast loan proceeds and the loan interest. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution relating to the attached budget amendments affecting the 2017-18 adopted budget.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Schaefer, a second by Commissioner Hill. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 9. Mr. Mike Tabor is not here today. Ms. Hines will address this.
Yes, sir. Agenda item number 9 is our annual grant matching program that we put forth and advertised for tourism-related projects to receive 50% matching grants from the bed tax. And this year, the solicitation was advertised for the current fiscal year of 18-19. 5 applicants were received, and the Tourist Development Council evaluated and made a recommendation on each of these. There are 5 applicants. Arcadia Main Street for Holiday Wine Walk at $2,000. Arcadia Main Street Downtown Beer Walk at $1,500. Arcadia Main Street Bike Fest at $3,000. Joshua Citrus Orange Blossom Festival at $1,500. And Friends of the Arcadia Airport Aviation City Brochure just shy of $300. And all of those are recommended for 50% matching funds.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
there's no questions. I'd like to make a motion to award the Tourism Development Advertising Matching Grant to Friends of the Arcadia Airport, Arcadia Main Street, and Joshua Citrus. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Langford, a second by Commissioner Hill. All in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 10. Mr. Hernandez.
Good afternoon, George Hernandez, Code Compliance Director. We have before you a request from Mr. Polk for a release or reduction of 2 demolition liens that were done by the county as part of their dilapidated structures process.
Name and address for the record.
911 Polk, 1201 Southwest Harlem Circle, Arcadia, Florida.
Board members, you have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hernandez, how much of this is the county out of pocket?
Out of pocket, the liens were for, one was for $2,758. The other one was for $2,146 for a total of $4,905.39. But in interest, both loans have accrued $5,421 on top of that.
I'm just saying, what is the county got invested? Without,
$4,905
okay.
and 39 cents.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, under discussion, I'm not for relieving any funds that the county's out. Now, I don't have a problem with the interest, but what the county is out, I would like for the county to get back.
Right.
That's just me.
Well, I totally agree.
I think that's what we'd already discussed before too, as board when this come up, when Pope brought this to us, that bring it back and we would, forgive the interest fees, but not the actual hard costs that the county had for, the work that the county's done. So with that, I don't have my calculator with me, so it's hard for me to determine what the actual amount that we're gonna be forgiving here is, because it all kind of run together in my packet.
Can you repeat that, George?
The amount-
4,900
The actual expense
hard
was
cost.
$4,905.39.
That's hard cost, or that's the
That's
actual
hard cost.
interest?
The interest, that would be forgiven if that's the rough, board one was $5,491.54.
Say that again, 5,000 what?
$491.54.
Okay, and that's the interest
That
that's
is
accrued?
right. Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Make a motion to release or reduce the demolition liens by resolution number 2006-104 and resolution number 36 and a total amount of, for both, for a total amount of $5,491.54 of the interest that was accrued over the liens. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Langford, second by Commissioner Mansfield. Any discussion? I have one. If in doing this, it would seem to me that there should be a time period that this be paid.
He has a question for the board. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Well,
George, you gotta speak in the mic.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear, but, Mr. Polk has a question for the board.
okay, but my comment to the board is this should have some time period on it, and that if it's not taken care of, how long has this lien been out there?
Years. These are
But it's-
2006.
So, but in 3 months, if it's not done, then those interest fees would go back on there. But,
And if you recall, Mr. Polk had bought these without title searches, didn't know there were code enforcement liens. They
Okay.
weren't his original liens, but he since acquired the property, but the liens are attached to the property.
And he is trying to get permitting for the property right now.
Mhm.
So he can't acquire permitting, until, based on our ordinance, until
Okay.
these are settled, he can't apply for permitting.
okay.
Commissioner?
Did you have a comment, Mr. Pope?
Yeah, I was saying, if I, like I had, could I get on something to like pay and still be able to pull the permits for the home? Or I would have to,
No. The lien, the 4,905.39 has to be paid, then you can pull your permits.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, can I ask, you asked a question about how long we have to do this. Is that something that you'd like to chime in, Mr. Attorney?
There's no precedent on this as to the county authorizing payment or requiring payment within a certain period of time that I'm aware of. So
Is there a,
the board can do what it feels is fair in this instance.
so, and to come back to, and I understand where you're coming from, want some help, and we've helped you pretty good bit here, about almost $5,500 worth, but if you've got one particular property that you're trying to get a permit pulled on first,
these two lots is actually, I'm putting one home on these two lots.
I got you. I was gonna say you could pay one and
Yeah,
and
see,
then
it's
pay the
like,
other one, but yeah.
it's going across both of them.
I'd really rather you pay both of them because I don't wanna open up Pandora's box. And whatever we do for one, we have to do for all, you know, so I just, I don't mind letting the interest slide because it wasn't on you. You've actually bought the place and taken care of it and cleaned it up, making it something decent again, so I commend you for that, but the hard costs that county's out, we need to recoup because that's a taxpayer's money.
And the fact that if we would allow the permit to be pulled without that lien being paid, would set a huge precedent. And I don't think any of us want to go there.
No, sir.
Okay. George, is there anything else that you need to address us on this with?
No, obviously, once the amount set by the board is satisfied, then we will file a satisfaction of lien, which will clear that lien, and at that time, he would be able to pull the permit. So there is still, I mean, we're moving forward that with the clerk of the courts to make sure it clears his records, and it'll satisfy our records as well.
So is there a time limit to your sentence or no?
No.
Okay.
But for his benefit, it's gonna be sooner than later. Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 11.
Yes, sir. Agenda item number 11 is a unique situation that's being brought to the board at a current retiree's request. I think all of you know and appreciate Mr. Clifton Brown and his 32 years of service. He retired from the sheriff's office, was it last Friday, week before, and provided a great service. However, Cliff Brown's tenure with the county is interesting. It's a little bit different. He was caught in a different situation. So back in 1986, Mr. Clifton Brown applied to the Desoto County School Board to serve essentially as what we call today a school resource officer. And he also made application to the sheriff's office during that same time. So Mr. Clifton Brown carried full-time employment with the school board. He carried his health insurance with the school board, and he served as part-time law enforcement, was carried on the books for the sheriff's department so that his standards could remain intact and that he could be a law enforcement officer under the employment of the school board. In 2002, Mr. Cliff Brown then became a full-time employee of the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office, where he went to be a road deputy. In 1986, we didn't have the school resource officers like we have today, and so Cliff was a direct employee. In the 90s, the DARE program came about, and there was a grant where the Sheriff's Office provided some school resource deputies through a combination of the county DARE funds and also school board funds. And of course, today, if you're a school resource officer, and probably longer than the last decade, you are a full-time employee of the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office, and you are placed in the school board, and any cost sharing that occurs administratively between the two organizations. So the Sheriff's Office pay the employees, they carry their insurance through the county, and at the end of the fiscal year, the school board makes a payment to the Sheriff's Office to offset their cost share in that school resource officer. That's changed significantly from Cliff first starting. So Mr. Cliff Brown, prior to his retirement, had made an inquiry to our Human Resources Department, where he was listed by our former Human Resource Director as eligible for Class B benefits. Remember, we have Class A, Class B, and Class C. Class B would mean that the county would pay his health insurance premium as a lifetime benefit, but would not provide any subsidy for dependent care. Class C, you can carry the same, but it's solely at your expense. And Class A, we also provide a subsidy for dependent care. Because of the unique circumstance, Mr. Cliff Brown is requesting that the board make consideration to maintain his eligibility under Class B. Strictly from a paperwork standpoint, he would not be eligible. He was clearly and uncontested a school board employee from 1986 to 2002. Your policy requires 16 years of continual service as an employee to qualify for the B benefits as of December 31st, 2008. So if you combine them, he clearly meets that requirement. If you look at them standalone, then obviously he doesn't. Cliff Brown is the only person. I've talked with the school board, I've talked with our sheriff's office, I've talked with sheriff's HR, and also with former sheriffs to try to get a little bit better history, and also Mr. Brown. And I've requested records from the school board, which I haven't gotten yet, as they're so old, they're archived, and might be difficult, take some time to find. But that is the request, is for a determination of eligibility for Class B benefits.
Commissioner
I have a
Mansfield.
question. Ms. Hines, did Mr. Brown fill out an application for employment with the sheriff department when he took that position?
Yes, sir, he did. He does have an application as a part-time, in 1986, he has an application as well, to be carried for standards through the sheriff's office. So yes, he did.
So he's basically a catch-22.
He's unique. Major, do you have anything that, I mean, I want you to feel free to say
And the
that.
reason I say that because the system that we have today
Right,
isn't run the same way it was back then.
correct.
So the people that are there today would qualify for that, is that correct?
They would, but they would be carried for those 16 years as.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
If saying the same circumstances were the same as they are today, we wouldn't be discussing this, correct?
Correct. So his employment application, which was completed on 10/17 of '86, is for law enforcement part-time application. And from what I gather from the sheriff and former sheriffs, that was to carry the standards. A law enforcement agency has to carry your standards for you to maintain your deputy rights and powers. Sir? After he left the PD, correct.
And at no time he was ever without his standards, correct?
Not to my knowledge. I did have a couple of copies of some FDLE recertifications, and what it shows employer was DeSoto County Sheriff's Office for standard purposes, but he was not on the payroll of the Sheriff's Office during that time period as a full-time employee.
He became full-time when?
In 2002, with the Sheriff's Office.
Board members?
Yes, Major, could he ever, I mean, being as he had he was affiliated with the sheriff's department, could they have called him out if he'd have been needed from that position that he was at when he was at the school board?
Theoretically, yeah.
Yeah, so he could have been called out to help assist the sheriff's department, whatever needs they might have had at any given time. Is that correct?
Mr. Brown also shared, another piece he shared with us, he has 2 certificates of appreciation, one provided by Sheriff Vernon Keene. The other doesn't say, it was also Vernon Keene, and that's in 1992 and 2000 prior to his full-time tenure with the Sheriff's Office. One is for operating the sheriff's vehicle with no accidents during the 98-99 period, and one is for evacuation and relief efforts during the 1992 Hidden Acres flooding event. It was an El Nino.
Yeah, so he was active during that.
He was working during that, but what we don't have are, our benefit requirement is that you have to work 30 hours a week on an average to qualify for benefits, even if you're part-time. So it has nothing to do with the number of hours that we classify for part-time or FRS does. It's 30 hours a week, and he certainly did not work 30 hours a week on an average for the sheriff's office above and beyond his school board duties. But he did work additional duties for the sheriff's office during that time. And I believe he and Gerald Ernest were the only 2 deputized school board officers during that time, to the best of my knowledge. Sir? Big Cliff was after Gerald?
Yeah, when Mr. Ernest retired, that's when Cliff wound up going to the school board, and he worked there for a short period of time, and then Darren Cross worked for 1 year also. And also during that time period between '86 and 2002, I think that was also employed by DCI as one of the instructors of that time period as well.
So HR had told him in the past that he was eligible,
Correct.
correct?
He was maintained on an internal list of eligible employees, future and past, yes.
No, Mr. Chairman, and I'm assuming that that's based on, because of the way the system is today.
I think it was based on just, his employment record showed employment from '86, just like he was recognized at the sheriff's office for 32 years service. He did not have 32 years service with the sheriff's office, but he had 32 years in law enforcement.
Major, did Did Mr. Brown also have to basically qualify just like the deputies do on the, whether it be at the ranges or whatever?
Up until the law changed pretty much where you can carry somebody's standards and never see them. You know, and I can't remember, I want to say sometime around 2008, the law changed, and at the time that law changed, it basically obligated anybody with law enforcement standards that they had to qualify at least once every 2 years in order to be able to retain their standards. Because what Florida found out was that there were some agencies that people would go through the academy, spend 25 years in the business and never fire the gun again. So that's when the standards one that changed. But prior to that, you could have been affiliated with an agency carrying your standards, never be seen, and just continue to have your standards carried.
So as far as we know, he always had his, correct?
He began his employment, if I'm not mistaken, in the 80s with our city police department. When he left there, then the sheriff at the time, I think it might have been Bob Thomas, agreed to carry the standards for him.
And I can show you what the sheriff's office, this comes from the sheriff's office, actual employment records. Division Patrol, title Deputy Training Officer, Clifton A. Brown. LEO for Law Enforcement Officer. LEO part-time, 11/1 of 86 to 7/9/2002. That's where he was carried for standards. LE auxiliary, 7/9 of 2002 to 8/12 of 2002. Law enforcement full-time, 8/12 of 02, and full-time 4/3 of 07. 11/1/86 to 7/9/02, carried as part-time, works as school resource officer, paid by the school board. 8/12/02 to 02/16/05, school resource deputy. 02/16/05, transferred to road patrol at the officer's request. 6/109, promoted to training officer, and effective 4/8/18, compensation adjustment pay increase, 45,600. Effective retiring 8/10/18. He was carried as high risk in the Florida retirement system through his tenure with the school board, and it is not normal, that's not the normal procedure is for school board employees to qualify for high risk retirement.
Major, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The school resource officer, back then and or today, they get there in the morning at 7:30, 7?
They come in at staggered times depending on what time of school, that particular school starts at. Yes, sir.
And they're there till that school ends, which is 6, 7 hours a day at least.
Unless there's an after-school program that's being covered, yes, sir.
During the 80s and 90s, when I would go by the schools and my kids were in school, the resource officers, every time I ever went by there, were there the whole time that school was open, which often would be at least 7 hours a day, if not 8, 5 days a week. I know they're classified as part-time, but the actuality is the person's there on duty at least 40 hours a week.
He was a full-time employee of the school board, not part-time, he was full-time.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So, really, really unique. And any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman? If no one else has another comment, because I think that Mr. Brown has just, you know, it's a shame that he's fallen through the cracks the way it was done, and it's not done that way today. With that being said, I make a motion to approve Cliff Brown's eligibility for Class B retired health benefits with a finding that Mr. Brown meets the definition of an employee who has served 16 years of service by December 31st, 2008 under the unique circumstances in the school resource officer history and modifications from 1986 to the present day.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mansfield, a second by Commissioner Langford. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 12. Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The next two items are resolutions that come before the board each year at this time of year at the request of the tax collector. The first one, item 12, is a request to extend the tax roll until the completion of the value adjustment board hearings.
If I may, Catherine Hill, tax collector, and Dave Williams, property appraiser. This is a Florida statute that allows the property appraiser time with the value adjustment board. This will actually give me the role prior to the value adjustment board hearings being closed, so that I can mail a tax bill out by November 1st.
Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
make a motion to move to adopt the resolution which extends the tax roll as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Mansfield, a second by Commissioner Schaefer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item number 13, Mr. Khan.
Item 13 is a resolution that requests that the tax collector not send any tax notice for a value of $5 or less. And this again is a resolution that we are requested to consider at this time each year.
Yes, please. We did a study, Mr. Williams, property appraiser and I. It costs more for a postage stamp than it does to send out those bills. A lot of the bills are like 7 cents, 8 cents, 32 cents, 25 cents. So we have to send, if we send those bills out, you're sending out an original bill, you're sending out a reminder, I'm sending out a delinquent letter, and a tax certificate letter. So I'd actually be mailing that one particular parcel 4 stamps through the year. So it's feasible that we actually do away with anything under $5.
Mr. Chairman,
And we do this every year. This is just a formality.
Commissioner.
I'd like to make this motion because it's not every day that the county commissioner gets to instruct the tax collector and the property appraiser at the same time. So, I would like to make a motion to adopt a resolution instructing the tax collector to not send tax notices which are for $5 or less, and instruct the property appraiser not to extend the tax roll for any parcel with a tax amount of $5 or less.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Langford, a second by Commissioner Hill. No, Mansfield. Y'all sounded alike. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Self, can I just say one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to tell you what a pleasure it is to work with Mr. Khan. I usually try to get things done real early, and apparently he's the same way. Every time that I've had a situation that I've needed, and as a constitutional officer, we have our own attorney, but he's attorney to the board, and he really helps me a lot, and I appreciate it, and I would like to thank him for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wait a minute, was that Mr. Khan or was that his partner?
That's the other part of it, the other half of it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, agenda item 14 involves a request for dispute resolution under a particular Florida statute 70.51 that Mosaic has filed with the county. This board took action after 11 hours of hearing on July the 25th to deny the rezoning application of Mosaic. That decision was reduced to a written order on August the 2nd, which set forth the specific reasons for the denial. Those reasons were based upon competent substantial evidence that was entered into the record during the 11-hour hearing. On the 14th of August, Mosaic filed a request for dispute resolution. Following a denial, a property owner who's seeking rezoning has certain legal rights. One of the rights that they have is to legally challenge the decision of the board and try to have that decision reversed, or they can seek dispute resolution. Mosaic chose at this time to seek dispute resolution. The effect of that under the Florida statute 70.51 is to toll, that is to stop the clock for the time by which they need to initiate their legal challenges in court to the board's action. Anyone who wants to go to court has 30 days after the board's decision to do that. But if they file a request for dispute resolution, that stops that clock until the end of that dispute resolution period. The reason I'm speaking with the board today publicly in this proceeding about their request for dispute resolution is that the exemption that allows the board to meet in executive session and discuss certain matters does not apply because there is no litigation involved at this point. The board can only meet in executive session to talk about litigation strategy or expenditures when there is litigation. And there is no pending litigation. That's why my discussions will be with the board in public session because that's what the law requires. So I undertook, after receiving this request, a review of the process under the statute. And that process has been very little used. I surveyed all of the counties through the Florida Association of County Attorneys. Got only one response from a county that's used this particular statute, and that was Lake County. For relatively small rezoning, perhaps one parcel, small permit disputes, perhaps a dock permit or an addition to a house, nothing of the magnitude of this issue. So it's little used, and therefore there's no precedent to look to. What's the nature of the process? It's been judicially recognized as a voluntary process. That is, we have to agree between Mosaic and the county to certain matters, such as the special magistrate. Appointment of a special magistrate has to be a joint decision. If it's a voluntary process and if there needs to be certain agreements, this process can only be effective, in my judgment, if the parties come to agreement on questions about the process that I think are evident when you look at the statute. The statute leaves a number of unanswered questions about how this process is to unfold. The statute says that the issue is whether or not the government acted unreasonably or unduly burdened the property owner's property. But the statute doesn't define those terms. The statute says that the parties will be the property owner and the governmental entity, and says that participants can ask to join, and that is certain members of the public and those who testified at the hearing can ask to join. Those persons being contiguous property owners and persons who testified or presented exhibits. The statute says may be allowed to participate, but then goes on to say shall not be granted party or intervener status. The question is, who makes that determination? It's not the county that makes that determination. We're only a party to the proceeding. It would have to be the special magistrate that would make that determination about who would be a participant. In addition, there are certain time limits that are set forth in the statute, some of which are unworkable. As I indicated, the property owner, in this instance Mosaic, had 30 days to either file a legal challenge or ask for dispute resolution, and they complied with that by filing their request on August the 14th. The statute then said that within 10 days thereafter, which would have been last Friday, a special magistrate had to be appointed. Well, that was totally impractical. This board hadn't met. I have no authority to agree to a special magistrate without this board's review and consideration. Further, the statute said that 5 days thereafter, the county has to respond, which again was impractical. So I spoke with counsel for Mosaic, and they have agreed, as indicated on the slide, to extend those dates to September 4th for selection of a special magistrate, and September 19th for the county to respond to their request. I won't go over the other time frames. Those are time frames about when the hearing is to be held, when the board must act. Suffice it to say that while the statute says the whole process has to be completed in 165 days, the statute also says that the dates can be extended. What are the options that are available to the board in dealing with this request for dispute resolution? If it goes to a special magistrate, and if the special magistrate comes back with a recommendation, the board could accept the recommendation and proceed to implement it. They could modify the recommendation and proceed to implement it, or they could reject the recommendation. As I mentioned, the request, simply by making the request, has told the time for Mosaic to seek judicial review. There's a question as to whether or not the Sunshine Law and Public Records Law applies to this process. The statute does say that this has to be a process that allows the public to participate. It doesn't say the Sunshine Law applies, but the public has a right to participate. The Sunshine Law has other requirements, such as notice, such as a record and minutes of the proceeding. But the statute says simply that the public has a right to participate and to attend. And then with regard to the Public Records Law, all it says is that the special magistrate's decision, his recommendation, is a public record. But what about the hearing? What about everything that goes on and that is submitted to this special magistrate? So it's evident that, at least in my mind, there were a lot of questions about this statute and how we proceed. And the first thing that I thought was important is that these questions have to be resolved before we agree to appointment of a special magistrate. The special magistrate process is costly. Some of the information that I've gathered indicate that a special magistrate, not necessarily in this proceeding, but in other mediations and in arbitrations, significant hourly rates. And before we even consider incurring those kinds of costs, it seems to me that we need to discuss and have resolution of certain procedural questions. First, the conduct of the dispute resolution process. The statute talks about in one place a mediation and in another place that it's an information gathering hearing. So what is it? Is it one or two steps? The statute talks about new evidence that the special magistrate may consider and may in fact subpoena witnesses to attend. What does that do to the record that was presented and formed before this body on which you based your decision? Can new exhibits be introduced and considered by the special magistrate? There's no authority in the statute for the special magistrate to swear witnesses. So is the testimony not under oath? So all of these are unanswered questions in my mind that need to be resolved. And what I'm going to ask the board today for, and I'm going to present you with specific recommendations, is some direction going forward on these issues and additional issues. You see there item number 2. What's the nature of the meeting or hearing when the county accepts or modifies the special magistrate's recommendations? The statute's silent. Is it just a board meeting? Is it a public hearing? Is it a quasi-judicial hearing? Obviously, you've conducted a very thorough quasi-judicial hearing with certain rights that have been granted to those participating in that hearing. Is that not to be followed by the special magistrate? Next, what is the legal exposure of the county if you accept or modify the special magistrate's recommendation? You have taken action based upon a record, based upon a quasi-judicial hearing. If you receive a recommendation from a special magistrate, which you think is a good recommendation, and you would like to do that, you would like to follow the special magistrate's suggestion, do you have legal exposure by those who may feel that you made the right decision to begin with? 4, what are the qualifications of the special magistrate? 5, what happens if the parties can't agree on the process for the special magistrate, and how do you declare impasse? Impasse is an action that's taken in mediation where, despite their best efforts, parties can't agree, and they declare impasse. That's the end of the mediation. Statute doesn't speak to how and when impasse can be declared. So what are my recommendations? First, again, I think before we consider appointment of a special magistrate, we need to resolve these questions. I recommend that the board, and I'm looking for direction that I can go to Mosaic's counsel and say, this is what my client, this is my client's position, this is the way we feel we need to proceed. A 1 or 2 step process. A 2-step if necessary. It may not be necessary. It may be that mediation is sufficient. But if we have to have a hearing, if we have to have a second step, then as you see there, I'm recommending that second step not allow the introduction of any new witnesses, any new exhibits, any new testimony. It be solely argued based upon the record. That's the way it would be in the District Court of Appeal. District Court of Appeal, when you go before them, you can't introduce new evidence. You have to argue on the record. And that's the way I would recommend we suggest that this proceeding go forward. The record would be introduced of the quasi-judicial hearing. Public participation should be allowed to argue again on the record. Those members who participated should be allowed to argue what they feel supports their position in the record. And I feel the Sunshine and Public Records laws should apply to this proceeding. And a very important point, I think, is that the time to request participation by the public should be extended until that time when we know we're going to go to the second step. That is, we're going to have argument on the record. The statute has language that says you have 21 days to request participation, and my goodness, a whole lot of folks have already requested participation. Those requests I have, and they will be preserved. But again, until a special magistrate is considered, is appointed, those cannot be acted upon. I feel we need to get agreement with Mosaic that the public has a continuing right to request to participate until such time as is determined we're actually going to have argument on the record. Should new issues be allowed? No. The issues are what was before this board, 15 criteria in the statute. And would the special magistrate be allowed to subpoena non-party witnesses? I don't feel that would be appropriate. That would be adding to the record. When it comes back before this board, whatever the special magistrate recommends, I would recommend that you hold a quasi-judicial hearing. Continue with the process that we have started, the process that allows for full public participation, the formation of a record, and not simply handle it as a routine matter in a board meeting. Can our legal exposure be limited if the board ultimately chooses to accept a special magistrate recommendation? Somewhat. I think if you follow what I've recommended, and that is if it comes back to you and you wish to follow what the special magistrate has recommended, and if there were no new evidence presented, if there was no new issues that were introduced, if it was a decision based solely on the record, and then you consider that recommendation in a quasi-judicial hearing, your liability can be limited. Qualifications of a special magistrate, I think we need to insist on substantial local government experience. What happens if the parties can't agree? Declare impasse, and it ought to be this board that has the authority, not me, but the board has the authority to declare impasse at any time. That would then allow Mosaic, if they choose to, exercise their legal rights and go exercise their judicial rights to challenge the board's decision. So by way of summary, I would like to request that you authorize me to represent the county and take the following positions. First, Unresolved questions must be answered before appointment of a special magistrate. 2, dispute resolution should be a 2-step process if necessary. 3, the special magistrate hearing should be based on the record of the quasi-judicial hearing with no new witnesses or exhibits and consisting solely of argument on the record with no new fact or legal issues. Public participation in presenting argument to the special magistrate shall be allowed, and the time to request public participation shall be extended. 5th, the process shall be subject to the Sunshine and Public Records Law. 6th, the board will conduct a quasi-judicial hearing when it considers any special magistrate recommendation. 7, if a special magistrate is appointed, that person shall have substantial local government experience. 8, the board shall retain the authority to declare impasse at any time. And lastly, that I will provide this board with status updates at the next meeting and at subsequent meetings about where we are in this process. Now, I have to say that nothing can happen. This is important for everyone in the audience to understand. Nothing can happen to change what this board has done except by action of this board. The special magistrate cannot order a change, and nothing can change the decision that the board made, except, of course, if Mosaic ultimately decides to exercise their legal rights and go to court, and if they were to prevail. But the process has been requested, that Mosaic had the right to request. I feel we ought to honor that request. We ought to, in good faith, raise these process questions, which I feel are legitimate, based upon the fact that there are unanswered questions in the statute and there's no precedent that we could look to. And we ought to conduct discussions to see if we can't resolve some of these issues. I would like the direction from the board. I've given you my recommendation. If you have other direction, I'm pleased to accept that. But I'd like to then move forward and then report back to this board at your next meeting and subsequent meetings as to where we stand. And in the meantime, very important to realize that nothing can change with regard to the board's action until it comes back before this board in a publicly noticed meeting. And with that, I'll stop.
Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, personally, I think Mr. Kahn's laid out a pretty good plan.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
I want to go to one point that you brought. Significant hourly rates. I want to know what significant hourly rates.
Two individuals have been identified for me who have experience in arbitrations and mediations. Their hourly rates are between $3.50 and $4.50 an hour. Now, the statute says the county must pay 1/2 of that. So, obviously, those particular individuals, while they're very well qualified, I wouldn't recommend either one of them, not because of the rate necessarily, but because of their experience. I feel we need to have someone who's a special magistrate who has local government experience, either with the county or a city, and knows what zoning is all about.
And it would be someone from how far away?
Well, it could be anywhere in Florida. The hearing, the special magistrate hearing, if there is going to be one, has to be in DeSoto County.
Right.
But the person could be from anywhere.
Okay. Or not?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kahn, at the end of the day, what is this really good for? I mean, and I don't mean that to be a smart aleck. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, if the people that's filed this against us don't get their way, chances are we're going across the street anyway. Correct?
Yes.
Basically, all this is we're just saying, hey, we want to have another hearing. I want you to pay for half of it and go through this extended, long, drawn-out process again to turn around and probably wind up in mediation, or not mediation, but litigation before it's over with.
Well, I can't predict how it would end. But I do know this. A request has been presented to the county under that statute. And it's my judgment that we ought to react in good faith to that request and not reject it out of hand. We ought to participate and try to resolve these unanswered questions and see if we cannot come to a process that we can agree to and that we're comfortable with. And you know, sometimes mediation surprises you and a resolution is arrived at. So we ought to give it a chance, in my judgment.
So, if we do this, at some point, we will be able to come up to the table and talk seriously.
If we go through this process, one of two things will happen. One, we will have discussions with Mosaic that the public is a participant in, that arrives at what is a way forward that is acceptable to everyone. Or we will fail. We will come to impasse, and Mosaic will go across the street and exercise their voting rights. And I say fail, that's not really failure. That is simply coming to impasse, not being able to find a compromised position. You know, the courts favor mediation. I mean, they really do. And so that's another reason why I think we ought to honor this request, and we ought to go ahead and try to see if we can make it work. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do this indefinitely, but I am suggesting that I report back to you regularly as to where we are, and we give it a try and see if it will work. In my judgment, if we don't do that, you open yourself up to another legal challenge by Mosaic in the form of a writ of prohibition or a writ of mandamus, forcing the county to participate. And I don't think we want to get into that.
So basically what I've just heard you tell me is that we need to go along with this process, and hopefully this process will rule in our favor. And if it does, that gives us a little more teeth if we have to go across the street.
Absolutely.
Okay, I can go along with that. All right.
My biggest thing about this is, I'm gonna go back to the significant cost. How many hours? Give me a framework on hours, because if the magistrate, he sets his own hours, how many hours it's gonna take him. He might snooze a little bit in there in between. But, if we're talking 100 hours, are we talking 20 hours? Are we talking 150 hours?
Well, I will say this. Under my recommendation, there would be less hours than if there's a full-blown evidentiary hearing.
Right.
Nevertheless, the special magistrate would hear argument, my argument, Mosaic's argument, the public's argument, and would be required to review the record.
Right.
You're probably talking about 25 to 35 hours of work.
The record is quite extensive.
The
and
the
transcript is.
very, very lengthy, and all the exhibits.
My guess is gonna be probably close to 60 hours or 70. But my concern here is we're a little small county. I want it on the record. Mosaic is a giant company, very giant. Their half of this is an infinitesimal drop in a bucket. If it turns out to be that we're paying a magistrate $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, that is significant in our budget. I would like them to be willing to do more than 50%. If we're gonna go this route. I do like the ideal, I think, because I feel like what we made our standards based upon, and made that decision based upon, one thing pops out to me is 30 million gallons a day. DEP checks it once a year. There's no way that could be approved. No way. And once we get to that point, any magistrate that can approve it or make a recommendation for approval based on that, without being able to say that water is clean coming off. Property owners do have property rights. I believe in that as much as anybody in here. I know you do, and we all do. However, that water coming off there is going to be as clean as the water it's going into. And there's no evidence that can be done. With that, board members, do you have any more comments?
Yes, sir, I do, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go on the record to say this too, that I believe this board done what it had every legal right to do the other night. And if, for whatever reason, we can't make decisions in this county, and we make decisions in this county that we followed the law, we followed the letter of the law. If what we've done was wrong, there was no sense in us here to begin with, and there should have been no question. They should just be allowed to do whatever they want to do. So that's my whole deal in a nutshell. You know, we're elected by the people, for the people, and that's what government is supposed to do, and that's who government's supposed to represent. I'll go along for what you said, Mr. Conn, because I respect you, and if I didn't, we wouldn't have kept you around that long, because you ain't all that handsome. But anyway, I respect you, and I'm gonna follow your guidance here with this, and go along with this process. And hopefully we'll have a special magistrate that can see what we seen and rule in our favor. Hopefully, when it goes to the next level, which we all know it will, if it don't turn out in their favor, and it's going across the street. Hopefully, this will give us a little more ammunition in our gun to help us have a little bit more of a solid case that we done what we should have done. So.
Before I call for public input. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a point in our proceedings today. This is not a quasi-judicial hearing. We're not here to talk about what we've already talked about and turned them down. I've got a good number of cards that want to speak. Before I call on the first individual, I'm going to ask you to only address what we are addressing here. You've heard Mr. Khan's statements. We're not addressing the good, the bad, or anything of the process of mining or reclaiming or any of that. This is strictly our motion today would be to provide the direction and authority of the county attorney to respond to the request for alternative dispute resolution received from a mosaic. So if you're going to speak, I ask that you only speak on that and nothing else, because those are not issues that we're here to discuss. Mr. Conn.
And if I could add to that, if the board gives me direction today, that is simply direction. I have no authority to make final decisions. Those decisions will be retained by this board. I will come back and report to the board, and the board will make its decisions in public session. So be assured that if this process goes forward, I will simply be advocating the board's position and bring those results of that advocacy back to the board for their final decision.
with that, you'll be on a timer. To be quite honest, we're giving you 5 minutes, but to hear what you feel on this issue, whether or not we go to a dispute resolution, should not take you 5 minutes to tell us. And again, we're not hearing anything about what we heard a month ago. With that, I'll call in order Helen Duncan. Name and address for the record, please.
I'm hard of hearing. My name is Helen Duncan. My address is 1855 Northeast Hammock Street, Arcadia, Florida. And I will try to address what you have here as far as addressing for a special magistrate, if I may. If you get a special magistrate, and as I understand Attorney Khan, that you're gonna go by his recommendation you're gonna recommend to the board whatever he recommends, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
No? He said that my understanding is the special magistrate, whoever would participate in this determination, he should have experience in the whatever governmental you're supposed to have. He needs to know what's going on with the county and other counties.
That's my position, yes.
But if he recommends that whatever it is that we rezone, is that gonna be your recommendation
No.
to the board?
No, my recommendation.
I understood you to say that, though, sir.
My recommendation will be that the board conduct a quasi-judicial hearing to consider whatever the recommendation is of the special magistrate.
Yes, sir, you said a lot. It's hard to comprehend everything you said because we're not legal people. But we have had a lot of issues come up, and like you say, they will be able to present all the videos. Will he be able to take a ride in a helicopter to go over this desolated land that's been mined and not restored? By seeing it is believing it. They need to see it. You can talk about it all day, but all of you need to take a ride. I've seen all the videos and I can understand that. But that special magistrate, whoever you choose, if you're going to do that, needs to take a ride. You need to go for that ride. I mean, seeing it like looking at a movie, seeing it in person will make a hell of a lot difference. I mean, I don't know why you even need a special, let Mosaic sue you. I mean, who's to pay the bill? We don't have the money, you can't pay them. Gonna get blood from a turnip. I mean, Mosaic, it's like a drop in a bucket for the $2 million penalty. I mean, it means nothing to them, all right? So we're poor. Let them sue us like you would a divorce. You know, I'm sorry. I don't understand all this, but what we're gonna read is gonna be very entertaining. You need to realize, being a special magistrate, is he gonna know anything? Is he gonna know anything without seeing it? You can tell him all day, take him out there, you guys need to get him a helicopter, I'll pay $100 for a helicopter, I don't know what it costs. I'll pay $100 for your special magistrate. God help pay. God knows my taxes are high, my insurance is high, and I live in this county, it shouldn't be so darn high, but it is. Thank you.
Thank you. David McCarty. Name and address for the record.
My name is Dave McCarty. I live at 16233 Buccaneer Street in Belkelia, Florida. I think my comments are going to be towards the real need for dispute resolution. As this gentleman here said earlier, are we wasting our money by going down that route? And it seems to me like the estimate of 20 hours that someone threw out shows that you might not really know what you're getting into with that resolution. There's a lot of hours that'll be going into poring over those records and talking about those records and mediating. So I think you're going to spend a lot of money, not have much left when you go across the street. So the other thing I like to say is, what's the possibility of getting a referendum or a vote amongst your constituents out here? See if they want to go to a dispute resolution. Because I think you go across the street saying that the people that put you on this board don't want to do that. They know, they like your decision. They want your decision to stand. I think that's more powerful than wasting a lot of money giving them another bite of the apple in this effort that we're talking about. I live downstream. I'm not a DeSoto County resident. I'm here to support DeSoto County. And I'm concerned, and I have a right to be concerned, because we see what's happened to us in Pine Island from the Lake O issue. We don't need the Peace River issue coming our way. There's a lot of people watching this council, a lot, outside of this county. There's other counties that are very concerned about what's going on. And we need you to uphold what the people wanted. Put you up there to do, and you did it right the first time. Just want to leave it that way. Thank you.
Andy Mealy?
Yeah. Andy Mealy, M-E-L-E, 2200 Avenue B, Bradenton Beach. This is extraordinary. What I've heard, I'd like to clone Mr. Khan, if I may, and distribute him around the other counties in the Bone Valley. I understand that I myself and probably 99% of the folks in this audience would like to say you got it right the first time, like the gentleman before me just said, and just leave it be. But I also understand that you have to pretty much go along with this, and you might as well just keep the moral high ground and just do it and bite the bullet. It's not going to be a huge bullet, and it will give you some significant credibility when you inevitably go across the street. Hillsborough and Polk County, in their day, they permitted mines, they got mined out, they got all these toxic acid plants, the workers there call them. They put 5 million pounds of overtly toxic chemicals into the water every year. And the way they get them out there is they just dilute them until they meet water standards and then let them rip. And so, you know, that hasn't gone past those two counties, but that's an example of what happened when counties back in the early days gave up their sovereignty to a big corporation. It's a little better with Manatee and Hardy as they worked south. Those counties put up a better fight, but you know what? You folks stopped them at the DeSoto County line. It was a historic decision, and you know, I know that the people of this county and Bradenton and Manatee County, et cetera, they all thank you for taking a gutsy, principled stand. Mr. Khan's recommendations, I believe, are impartial. I believe they are legally astute. I believe they provide a good foundation for the county to go forward in the best possible way to defend itself against the inevitable litigation. And you know, it's scary to think about going across the street. You know, they're going to make billions of dollars in profits off of that mine if they get their hands on it. But it's my understanding as a non-attorney from so many people that I've spoken to that you are in a good place regarding the Harris Act and other takings laws. You are in a good, strong place because you never permitted a mine, you never rezoned for, well, you got the 9,000 acre rezone. You know, you're in a good place. It's one that you can argue, one that you can defend, and one that you can probably win, although I know that's pointless to say. But what's setting up here is a small county, a small, not very rich county, full of some really good people who have a lifestyle that they like and respect and would like to maintain, going up against a big, rapacious corporation. You've given me one more reason to be proud to be American. Thank you.
I think I'm gonna get this correct. Dennis Mather?
Thank you. My name is Dennis Mader, 4224 Solomon Road, Kona, Florida. I just wanted to comment here. I agree with Mr. Melly and other people who have commented, I think y'all got it right the first time. And when I reread your rationale on the 7 criteria that you discussed in your rejection of the rezoning request, it just seemed to me that there was absolutely nothing unfair or unreasonable about what you, so I think your position is strong, and that's also the advice that we've gotten from our legal counsel. But he gave us a somewhat more detailed account of what a dispute resolution looks like because he's participated in them before. And that might be worth mentioning because the mediator is, according to the law, committed, and his purpose is to find a mediated solution for this issue. And so he is going to divide you up into rooms. I participated in a mediated settlement with Mosaic in 2010, and between 2010 and 2013. It took us 3 years to mediate a resolution to the South Fork Bead Mine extension. We sued them in federal court, and ultimately we did enter into a mediated solution, but it was a long, detailed process, a lot of phone calls. We didn't do it and divide it up into rooms, but you do it by telephone, so it was a long process. And I agree entirely with Mr. Self. If you're going to enter into a process like that, I think you ought to begin by negotiating a better deal about who pays for this, for your mediator, for your special magistrate. So that should be, I think, should be one of your priorities before you even agree to enter into this resolution. And, because I don't know why it should come out of your pockets. You are entirely within your rights when you refuse that rezoning. So anyway, my thoughts and hopes are with the Board of County Commissioners of Desoto County. I think you did the right thing. I agree. It was a historic decision. I don't know what it is about no that Mosaic can't understand, but I would say to look for a better division of the financial burden of this special magistrate if you decide to proceed. Thank you.
Sawyer C. Smith. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, board. My name is Sawyer Smith, and managing partner of Wilbur Smith Attorneys at Law in Fort Myers. Our address is 1415 Hendry Street. I'm here on behalf of an organization formed in Charlotte County called PREACH. It stands for Peace River Charlotte Harbor Environmental Awareness. Some of the members are in the audience today and will address this honorable board individually. I would just like to take a moment to thank this board for the courage that they had and the vote you made denying the zoning, the rezoning request made by Mosaic. We all know that under Florida Statute 70.51, this board has no choice but to enter into the alternative dispute resolution process. Your counsel is very learned and explained very, very well what he believes and what I agree with. The obligations are of the special magistrate, otherwise known as the mediator. I would encourage this board to also direct your county attorney to display the backbone that this board displayed when they voted against the rezoning, and encourage your county attorney to stand the ground that the board stood when they denied the rezoning request. Your board's denial of the rezoning was based on and supported by competent, substantial evidence, and it was not unreasonable, and it does not unfairly burden this property. And those are the elements that eventually a trial de novo, for a review of a trial by a way of the facts, would entail. So this board showed strength to stop something that would substantially change the characteristics of this region. I am not from Arcadia, I'm from Fort Myers, but we are pioneer Fort Myers. We came down after the war, like a lot of people did, and I don't want to see all of the water leached down our direction from here as much as y'all don't want to see that. So on behalf of Preach and on behalf of the Smith family, I would say thank you. I'll yield the balance of my time to any more members of our organization. Thank you.
Mr. Newt King?
Kind of funny how I don't see anybody from Mosaic here.
Thanks, board members. Just quick comment. Thanks, Mr. Khan. Excellent job. I think you've covered everything that needs to be covered. My only question is now, to be for, let's say myself and Jeff Griffin as property owners that are affected, be surrounded by them and Jeff on the tail end, do we have to file something to be considered a part of this, or?
Certain individuals have in fact filed requests to participate. However, the deadline for you to do that doesn't even, the clock doesn't even start ticking until the county determines that we're going to move forward with this process, that we're able to resolve these issues and we're going to move forward. Then the county is obligated to send notice to all contiguous property owners, as well as those individuals who testified or presented exhibits at the hearing, that you would then have 21 days following that notice to request the right to participate.
Okay, and who do and you'll let us know who to send that notification to?
You can send it to me, you can send it to Mr. Hahn now, or you could wait until the board decides whether or not we're going to move forward and you get a written notice in the mail.
Roger, okay. And can we do that individually, or we have to be represented by council?
No, you do not have to be represented by council. You can do it individually. Those people who testified can do it individually, absolutely.
Roger, okay, and that's all I had to offer. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie Harbison?
My name is Connie Harbison, 10961 Southwest Cypress Bend Avenue, Arcadia.
Would you pull the mic down? There you go.
I did address the board last month and I testified, you may recall, about my students' horrifying field trip to the Fox Cave Mine in Mulberry. I won't go back on that, just a reminder. I need to reiterate what I feel is an urgent need for you to deny any further attention to the request for an alternative dispute resolution by Mosaic. It is unclear at this time why they would compromise. Why would Desoto? What would be gained and lost in that exchange? I think our position as a county, thanks to the wisdom of our board, our position is quite clear. And I can't imagine where that opening might be that we would compromise. But I feel a little preaching maybe here. I would like us to save our money, because there may be inevitable litigation forthcoming. So hundreds of thousands of dollars to gain nothing seems wasteful. Legal rights on their part may sometimes supersede moral rights. In such cases, those legalities are wrong and they must be changed. That might come out of Tallahassee, or it could be local, I do not know. Long ago, one bold American writer, Henry David Thoreau, went to jail to protest a law that he considered to be immoral. And from that, he went on to publish a book entitled, rather unknown, it is entitled The Necessity of Civil Disobedience. Now, we are not in any shape suggesting any civil disobedience, but his position was that he had the courage of his convictions, and he lived them in jail for some time. We will not come to that here, but the point that I need to stress is that some finer points of the law or loopholes might not be moral, and our overriding sense of right needs to prevail. Thank you again for your wisdom.
Robin Leach.
Good afternoon. I'm not from the lifestyles of rich and famous. I am here to thank you.
Name and address.
My name is Robin Lee, 656 Hawaii Court, Punta Gorda, Florida. I'm a retired charter captain working on Charlotte Harbor and the Peace River. I am a friend of the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program, and I do monthly water testing for the harbor to test its quality. I've been following from afar everything that you people have done, and I want to thank you. Thank you for your conviction and your decisions. And there's a lot of people in Charlotte County and snowbirds that come down for the winter that are behind you 100%. Thank you.
Richard Sarkeesian. Richard Sarkeesian. Carol Mailer. Name and address for the record.
Carol Mahler, 5578 Southwest Woodlawn Terrace, Arcadia, Florida. I want to thank the board for your decision on denying the rezoning that happened back on July 25th. I want to thank Mr. Khan for a very excellent presentation that was easy to understand, and so we know what is out there and what we're supposed to do and so forth. He did say that it was needed for us to react in good faith. And I think in good faith, because the Mosaic Company knows DeSoto County's situation, in that we are not a wealthy county, that if they would like us to participate in this mediation process, we should ask them to excuse our half and to take it over, so that they would pay for this process 100%. I think that the decision that was made by this board back in July was the right one. And I don't know what would be gained by mediation, but I do know that when we have that request before us, we need to respond to it. So I hope that we would be able to go forward and to ask Mosaic, because they asked for this, that we also ask them to pay for it. Thank you.
Vicki Steiner.
Hi, Vicki Steiner, 711 Southwest Environmental Lab Street. I wasn't prepared to talk today, but I have a couple things I want to ask you. I know that you made the right decision on July 25th for the citizens of DeSoto County. I thank you sincerely for that decision. I just want to ask you to please stay with the original decision to deny Mosaic's rezoning requests, and we will support you and your decision from July 25th. I want to ask, how can we be sure that the special magistrate is neutral and is not a Mosaic sympathizer? If Mosaic pays more than legally necessary, especially, how do we know that that person can and will be neutral? Maybe a fund could be started to help with any legal fees when the special magistrate process is finished, when Mosaic does eventually sue the county, because I think they will. But after listening to Mosaic's testimony, their own testimony of those 2 days, I'm even more concerned than I was before about the dangers of their 5 separate daily water releases. and the pollution levels from those five separate daily water releases into the Horse Creek and other tributaries. I talked with a person that works for Mosaic, bumped across the person that works for Mosaic, and I asked him if they test the water before each of those releases, and what do they do with millions of gallons of water that should not be released, and he couldn't answer that question. I just want to ask, if we spend too much money on a magistrate, will there be enough money to fight Mosaic legally, or is that part of their plan to drain our resources? But thank you again for your decision on the 25th, and we'll be here. We'll support you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Hollenhaus?
Thank you, Sarah Hollenhorst, 9347 Southwest Raccoon Trail. I'm just here to thank you again for standing up for the citizens and the fact it was based on legal objections according to the 15 factors. And I trust the commissioners have a vision for our community's future that is built around our history, our horse community, agriculture, and ecotourism, and will continue to reject the idea of a congested, damaged, unhealthy community that I would first see if Mosaic were to mine, and to mangle a poem, Casey at the bat. There would be no joy in Mudville if we strike out. So I have faith in all of you. Thank you.
Molly Brown? Molly Brown? Oh, Bowen, excuse me.
Molly Bowen, live on Eucalyptus Avenue, and I agree, of course, with everyone, here thanking and being very appreciative of all you've done for us. And I just like to remember me and my 6 kids, and my grandchildren, my 9 grandchildren that I have here. We don't want to leave here, we love it here, and we want to stay here, but of course we can't stay here if we're supposed to mining. So, and Mr. Brown, thank you for your service. I really, you were there when my kids were coming up, and I just am very thankful. I'm just thankful to everyone and you all and to God, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Paul DeGata?
Paul DeGata, 2936 Peace River Drive, Punta Gorda, Florida. Thank you, Chairman Self and Commissioners, again for hearing from a neighbor that shares a county line in the Peace River. This issue was originally framed as what came first, the chicken or the egg. You can't have one without the other. You can't have phosphate mining without a rezone, and you wouldn't need a rezone unless you weren't going to phosphate mine. You listened to 2 days of testimony that addressed all 15 points, which they brought up and opened that door, as one of our commissioners pointed out. And we looked at those 15 points from that perspective. The people have spoken. You commissioners heard us in the finest tradition of a representative republic. I remember you telling us that you prayed for wisdom before that. It was a very emotional hearing, and I believe you received that wisdom. We just wanted to say thank you, and we're here for you, and we'll be here to support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Garrett Rainey?
Hi, Garrett Ramey, 1205 Taylor Road, Mayaca City, Florida. First, I'd just like to clear the air and apologize to every one of you for my behavior, both on social media and in your chambers. I would just like to get that cleared and just have a fresh beginning. As you can see, phosphate mining is stressful. We're back here again. You can just feel that burden sitting on your shoulders. Now, this is what it does. So, on July 26th, I went and attended a hearing in Manatee County right after your hearings as they applied for an operating permit. Manatee County granted them an operating permit for Wingate East, which has been a dispute, and as you know, I am in a lawsuit with them. Now, I'm the type of guy that doesn't wait for them to call me across the street. I go across the street and meet them. And we go ahead and address things like that. I have a lawsuit with them currently. Ralph Brooks is representing me. I think that we can fundraise enough money so that we can get you the support that you need. Okay, you had our backs, and it's my word that we will have yours. Okay? So, I also filed another lawsuit using the 70-51, an appeal to Manatee County, and I utilize the same format that Mosaic's using here. So I'm curious to see, this has never been done, so I'm curious to see how this goes. Like I said, I'm not afraid to cross that street. We have your back. Y'all are absolutely wonderful. You know, I just sat here through all these other agenda items, and everybody here coming here is a citizen, and you represented the citizens. What a total contrast this is in Desoto County. This is an attractive place to live, and y'all made the right decision. Y'all have a great opportunity here to attract the right people here. And, you know, my situation is ironing out. We also had a revelation there in Manatee County where Mosaic is obligated now to purchase my property because they're sick of seeing me. They're sick of seeing me coming up there. They're sick of hearing about me. And everything we do, we confront the issues right at hand. We utilize the comprehensive plan. We addressed every issue. It was delivered by the citizens and the county commissioners, unified, and they have no standing ground. If it was me, I don't disagree with Mr. Khan because of the process. I'm doing the exact same process that Mosaic's doing right now. Okay, I don't disagree with this. I do feel, though, that maybe you should take the upper hand. Who are they to come into your county and bully you? I mean, call the Attorney General, call the U.S. Marshal's Office, get a protection order on DeSoto County. Who are they to challenge you to take funds from your county to defend your decision? No means no. You did it legally. You did it right. And again, as other people have said here, you know, we prayed for wisdom, and that was my fault. And that's where I failed as a man. I should have put my trust in God, put my trust in you guys, because you did what was right. And I've seen it here today. I mean, agenda item after agenda item, y'all did what was right. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being outstanding people. You know, integrity is who you are behind closed doors. And I see nothing but integrity here in this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. James E. Sam McLeod.
Hello. First of all, Commissioner Langford, Sam McLeod, 437 North Lee Avenue, Arcadia, Florida. One straight guy to another. Mr. Collins, plenty good looking. I can see it only going two ways. We go to mediation and we win. Right? So we win, we still have to go to court. That'll be costly. We go to mediation and we lose, then we're even worse off than we are right now. So it's kind of a heads Mosaic wins, tails we lose. Either way, it's going to be very, very costly. It's open-ended. There is no set fees, no top end that could be out of your pockets. So if you think that you made a mistake or it's possible that you might change your mind on your votes, then go to mediation and listen to what the guy has to say. If you believe that you did make a correct decision, it's really, in my opinion, just wasting money. I'm kind of proof. I will stand by whatever you decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Fisher.
Fisher. I live at 3114 Willow Road, Punta Gorda, Florida, just across the line. I'm a charter boat captain, operator, and you guys know that your decision is more than just DeSoto County. You know, it's everybody's been watching it and following it. We have groups coming from everywhere because it's going to be the water. You know, it's going to come south and whatnot. So, and I just wanted to say thank you for what you've done so far and to hold strong with what you're doing. We believe in what you made was the right decision, and down south, and we're looking at for you for the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Alibaba Nunga. I hope I got that correct, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Alibaba Lumumba, 2197 Southwest Highway 17. I basically have some questions to help clear me up. On this dispute resolution, what's the county willing to give up to please Mosaic?
Nothing.
All right, so why do we need to participate in this? Okay, rhetorical, no answer.
Well, no, we'll have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer. If you recall, that's pretty much the same question I asked Mr. Conner.
Right.
You know, we've made our decision. Why do we want to go to this mediation to hash it out and have a rebirth of it all over again? But like Mr. Conn says, we feel that we've done the right thing. Mediation, should it go in our favor, it gives us a little more. It gives us a little more muscle, so to speak, if we have to go across the street.
Okay.
So, and that's pretty much why we're even considering it, because we feel we've done right. If I feel I've done the wrong thing, then I would be trying to change my mind now. But I don't think this board's done the wrong thing, and I think the magistrate, when he gets done going through all the criteria that we went through, the 11 hours of everything that we went through, and actually it was a lot more hours than that. Just 11 hours of sitting here. It wasn't all the phone calls and all the emails and everything else we went through too. But so that's why we're doing it. We feel we're going to prevail, and if we prevail, that just gives us one more bullet in our gun.
Now, if I heard right, that there's no previous cases like this, right?
None that I've found, no.
None that you found. So therefore, we will be setting a precedent in taking this case on.
And that's why it's so difficult to answer the questions that I presented. And the statute raises so many questions because there is no precedent. And so what I'm asking the board to do is give me direction on these questions.
And I feel that the board shouldn't set any precedents. That's my feeling. As far as money, this is a poor county. Therefore, I like the idea that Mosaic, have them pay the cost, but then I have the problem of, them controlling because they're paying the cost. So I'm asking the citizens that maybe we should have some type, if you decide to go through this dispute resolution, that maybe we can have some type of fundraiser to help our county. What's that? All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rachel Curran. Name and address.
Rachel Curran, 1105 Fremont Street South, St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm staff attorney with the Center for Biological Diversity, and we will be seeking public participants in this process. I first want to thank you, like so many elders have, for your vote last month. And to please maintain the courage of your convictions. I encourage you to do that. And realize the strength of your negotiating position as you go into this mediation process. Your decision was legally sound. There's really no need to compromise, in the sense that Mosaic, that's the whole point of a mediation, is to come to a compromise. And when you go in knowing that there's no way to safely mine phosphate, remember that you made the right decision and that you don't have to compromise on that. And that's one way to save on magistrate costs as well, to have a real short mediation process. Come to that impasse quickly if you need to. In addition to choosing a special magistrate with substantial local government experience, please make sure that the special magistrate also believes in as much public participation as possible. That goes for both steps of the two-step process, the mediation and the information gathering hearing It's my understanding that the special magistrate really sets the tone for how much the public can participate, but if you make that known clear and you sort of advocate on the public's behalf, that would be much appreciated, because we would like to participate in all stages as much as we can. Thank you.
Gina Laguna.
My name is Gina Bruno. I live at 4900 North Tamiami Trail in Sarasota, Florida. And I do want to start out by saying thank you. You guys have definitely become a solution to some very big issues occurring throughout our state when it comes to the water and the health of the land. I wanted to ask a question. So we're coming up in a voting season, so if we take this mediation on, take it on, will the members be the same right now? Are we gonna have new faces in? We are. Okay. So with that said, thank you for, no is good enough. You have denied them. No is good enough, because no matter what they're trying to do is make you cross the street. You don't have to go into mediation. Everything you've decided is already sound and solid. And so, if they have the guts to take you further, let them. But right now, for DeSoto County, you have made a precedent across this state. You see what's going on in Sarasota and Manatee, in Lake Okeechobee. There's more to it. I can't get into all of that right now, but I'm gonna tell you, you have made a very sound decision. And if there are going to be other members that were not here for this original decision, you should not go into mediation. That is just my suggestion. I am not telling you what to do, but I really feel that you guys have made the best decision that you can possibly make. So, thank you very much for the courage that you have had. It's been so impacting after fighting this corporation and this state's government for 7.5 years. You guys have stood up to the beast, and I am grateful for that. Keep your stand. No, you're not allowed to come here. Have a good evening.
That is all the cards I have. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, we've listened to the public, and I appreciate their input, very much so, but I have to agree with Mr. Kahn, and I kind of have the same feelings that this is just a waste of time, but then again, when you look at the big picture, that we're gonna wind up across the street regardless. I feel that wholeheartedly. That's what my gut tells me, and my gut normally is not wrong. We're gonna wind up in litigation before it's over with. So if this mediation will help us show good faith that we're willing to move forward, and we're going to stand behind our decision, and hopefully the special magistrate will see that we've done everything that we were supposed to do and rule in our favor. Like I say, that gives us a little bit more extra when we go to mediation. I'm gonna go to litigation instead of mediation. So with that said, I'm for following what our attorney's recommendations are. And that's just my 2 cents worth, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the fellow board members what they
I agree. I mean, I think Mr. Combs laid out a pretty good plan. You know, right, wrong, or indifferent, as long as we show in good faith, then you know, that either you do that or you go straight across the street. And I think it's something that we really need to look at. Let it play out. I mean, that's the the process that the statute's laid out.
I agree with the whole thing. That's one of the reasons we have Mr. Khan, is to look out for this board and with the decisions that we make. And this does not mean that we have to change our decision, correct?
Absolutely correct.
So, with that being said, I'm on that page.
Okay. Done?
I agree with what Mr. Cotton said, he laid out a plan.
Well, when we received at the last meeting, the letter that Mr. Khan shared with us, my immediate reaction was a lot like yours. Just, why even try? But then, before I, left, I had an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Khan and discuss a little bit, and, I'm convinced that our decision was absolutely sound, that it will hold up in court, but that it will also hold up under a special magistrate. And that, and like Commissioner Langford, it's not if, it's just a matter of when it's going to go across the street. And I think we'll be in a better position. So, I think Mr. Khan has laid out an excellent plan. The attorney from Fort Myers, Mr. Smith, commented on that, and so I appreciate some of the comments from those of you who are working with us. The board still has to make a vote, which we are going to do shortly. Any mediation that comes from this, in my opinion, I am fully convinced that we were right, and that the mediator can mediate and make a recommendation. It's not going to change my opinion on it. With that said,
Before you call for a motion, there was discussion of possibly an additional direction to me, and that is to seek Mosaic's payment of a larger share, perhaps as much as full share of the cost of the process. And I just mentioned that was discussed by some, and if that's the will of the board, we could add that as number 10. If not,
what's your plan?
I'm almost afraid to do that. I mean, great idea, but if they're paying the whole bill, then my question is how much is that gonna influence?
None, but.
Well, remember one thing, we have to agree to the special magistrate. And this board will be informed of the special magistrate's qualifications, background, and experience, and we have to agree.
Try and see.
Yeah. Swing up against the wall and
See if it sticks.
I just say, I wouldn't mind asking, I wouldn't mind going to the table and asking. If it's not, if they wind up and say they want to do 55%, that helps us 5% for them. So I would definitely put that in as an addition to the request for authorization and direction for number 10 to ask for substantial for more payment from their part, being they're the ones that's brought this burden on us, so to speak.
Mr. Khan, what's the worst thing they can say? That's my point.
What I used to tell the girls, and when I used to do the Miss Desoto pageant, was the only stupid question is one that you don't ask. So if we don't ask, we don't know. So it's not stupid.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion, to provide direction and authority, for the county attorney to respond to the request for alternate dispute resolution received from Mosaic and add to the, 9 requests, that he's put under authorization and direction, add a number 10 to ask for additional funds from Mosaic to pay for this mediation. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Langford, a second by Commissioner Mansfield. Is there any further discussion? Before I call for the vote, I want to express to the audience first my appreciation for your civility today and in this meeting. I know people's emotions get strong on certain issues. But I also want to ask that after we have voted on this, we still have more work to do up here tonight. So, if you're gonna leave the meeting, I would ask that you would leave quietly and any conversation goes on outside the doors. And that allows us to go ahead and conduct the rest of our business meeting here today. With that said, commissioners, are you ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, vote aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We do not, the agenda item number 15 will be tonight at 6:30. And with that, I will go to Ms. Hines for the administrator report.
Yes, sir, I have nothing to report today, just one question for the board on consensus for direction, and that would be on the future handling of code enforcement lien reduction request.